Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is the Screen Watching Podcast. On the show this week, we're talking about the Muppet Show 2026. Yeah! Also, on the program, we're talking about the new stand-up comedy film, A Pasty White Man Talking into a Microphone. Not for me, thank you very much. What else are we discussing here on this here podcast? We are taking a look at the new Jason Statham movie. There's I'm guessing a documentary. Simon has not filled in the information. It's called Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. What else have we been watching? Dan's taken a look at the movies he's gone and seen. 2 films on Netflix.com. There's Bank of Dave and Bank of Dave 2, The Lone Ranger. Folks, this is Screen Watching. Stick around. There's more to come. Yeah, all right. Let's do this.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher! Mother!
Secret lover. What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Simon Foster. This is, of course, the Screen Watching Podcast. My name is Dan Barrett. You are Simon Foster, correct?
I am Simon Foster. Hello, Screen Watchers everywhere. I don't know who that was, but he was a hell of an intro guy. What a fantastic performance he put in. To those of you, who are watching us on the video feed, the guest intro was quite the guy. Quite the guy.
Indeed. Good guy. Good guy. Simon Foster. I've been waiting for about 20 odd years to have an excuse to use my Dan Barrett Muppet.
It's awesome.
It's been built to look like me.
It looks kind of like you. Where did you score one of those?
So my sister, back in, I don't know, this was like early 2000s.
Oh my gosh, back in the day.
She was on holidays in the US. I was in New York in one of the large toy stores that don't exist anymore, that may or may not have been featured in the movie Big. There was a Jim Henson's Muppet thing. It's like the Muppet Workshop, I think they called it.
Oh, okay.
So it's on my bag over there that it comes in. And she went to the thing and spent $150, which was a fair bit of money for her back then.
Sure, it still is.
Yeah.
And you get to make your own Muppet. And she
got to build a Muppet that looked just like me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I could barely tell the difference. It was just as animated as you normally are.
I mean, I've got my standard sort of felt exuberance that's really coming through.
You have that thin layer of hair across your face. I don't
Indeed. Simon Foster.
I'm excited. Yes.
It's a big week where the two of us went and saw a movie. We're going to talk about the new Bradley Cooper stand-up comedy feature film thing with Job in it.
Bradley Cooper with Will Arnett in it, called Is This Thing On?
Yeah.
Dropping into the February doldrums of movie going.
Which is probably where I think it deserves to be. But folks, we're also going to talk about the Muppets, but let's talk about the new Bradley Cooper film, shall we? Yeah.
Well, let's talk very briefly. What's your favourite, off the top of my head, with this thing where we do our question at the top of the thing? Do you have a favourite stand-up comedy bit or stand-up comedy movie, or what comes to your mind when I say, Dan, stand-up comedy?
You know, one of the challenges I have with this movie, and this is really going to inform a lot of the stuff I talk about, is that I think that we're all really, really familiar with the business of stand-up comedy and the art form and the structure of it these days. I kind of feel as though since the sort of beginning of podcasting really starting to take off, most of the initial podcasts that became really big were stand-up comics. So you're thinking about people like, say, Mark Maron's the really obvious one, but that's a slew. I mean, Joe Rogan, the #1 podcast, I think still in the world technically, it's stand-up comedy. He features stand-ups through it, talks about the business of it a lot. I feel that as a result of that, as a consequence of it, we know stand-up really, really well. I watched this TV series on HBO for 3 seasons called Crushing, which is this really did you ever watch Crushing?
I never did. I do know of it, but no, never got around to it.
Yeah, look, Crushing, if people don't know it, this is HBO's TV program, and the premise of it is that you've got Pete Holmes, who's a real-life stand-up comedian.
Yes, he is a very funny guy.
Yeah, basically he was given a chance to do a TV show with HBO. So he did a TV show about him and his early days of becoming a stand-up comic. So much like in his real life, he went through a divorce, and then and this is going to feel very much like an echo of what we're talking about, this feature film. But he's going through a divorce, and it's about him sort of coming to terms with who he is as a person, trying to find identity. And he does that through getting involved in the stand-up comedy circuit.
Sure.
A lot of it is set around in comedy bars around a place. The Comedy Cellar plays a role sort of within the program. And you watch through season after season him build a career in stand-up comedy. I think the show is a little bit hard going for the first couple of episodes, but once they find a way to bring the spirit of Pete Holmes really into the program, he's such a charismatic person in a very sort of buttoned down, just awkward, very Christian way. But as the show goes on, it's just it's really compelling you're watching a human going through this emotional experience, but you're also just watching this construction of what it takes to be a professional stand-up
to the
comedian.
point of the construction of the jokes, like going through the process of weeding out the winners and figuring out which are the
all
losers.
of it. So
That's really
business, the touring, the coming up with material, the relationships along the way, it's all captured really, really well in this. Now, whether it's completely authentic entirely to the experience, I'm not too sure. But in a way that when you're watching something and it paints a constructed world where it feels authentic, the TV show absolutely did that.
I would... First of all, I'm surprised, and I'm saying this without having ever seen a episode of the series, but you're a fan of the Miss Maisel, aren't you? Isn't that a stand-up comedy show?
So Marvelous Mrs. Maisel kind of... Look, there is an awkwardness with me taking the stance that I'm going to on this movie in just a short while, because Maisel takes some very similar beats along the way.
Right.
Where I think that Maisel splits itself out from, I guess, the movie we're going to talk about, but also things like Crashing, is that I think the stand-up comedy, the actual performance on a stage, is broadly kept to a minimum for the majority of it.
Okay.
Yes, there are some sequences where she's on stage doing the jokes, but most of it is very much about the crafting a career as a stand-up at a time where there wasn't really a career around it entirely, especially not for a woman.
The stand-up films that I consider to be benchmark ones, Punchline with Sally Field and Tom Hanks. It was a part that was so perfect for Tom Hanks as this driven comic who takes this housewife under his wing and starts to resent the fact that she's getting much more liked and many more gigs than he is. It's got a dark underbelly to it, which I think is kind of touched upon in the film we're going to review. Another film that has an amazing performance from Dustin Hoffman out front is the Lenny Bruce story called Lenny, directed by Bob Fosse. It's been many years since I've saw that, but I remember it completely rocked my world. It's worth seeking out if you can. And a documentary called Comedian, which actually...
Yeah.
Have you seen that with Jerry
Yeah.
Seinfeld and the young sort of ingenue comedian who follows him around and sort of shows what
I'm trying to think of that guy's name.
Yeah, I can't think of his name anyway. I'm sure there's some way we could look it up if the internet had a database about movies. But this is a quite a dark documentary. Miramax released it, I guess, around the turn of the century, maybe late
2002.
2002, there you go. And it follows both Seinfeld at his peak and this young comedian who's trying to break in, and it's got some dark moments in there as well. So I don't know if that's available anywhere. I haven't seen it on any of the streamers at all. I've got this old American DVD of it somewhere.
So the up-and-comer, his name's Orny Adams.
Orny Adams, did he ever up and come into anything? What?
Simon, I mean, come on.
Is he still around? I've never heard of him since that documentary.
I will say that Orny Adams is probably best known for being the TV documentary comedian.
Okay.
Alongside one Jerry Seinfeld.
All right. So stand-up comedy. See, I don't really like stand-up comedy. Sometimes, obviously, the greats, the Robin Williams at the Met, Eddie Murphy Raw. I think probably the best example of the psychology of the stand-up comic is Robert De Niro in The King of Comedy. Because I've known a couple of stand-up comics, and they're kind of nutty people, with all due respect.
Oh, no, I think going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, if you think about the rise of podcasts, I think that's become highly apparent that they're all a little bit sort of, not quite there in the head. But this is largely what the podcasts are about.
Yep.
But Simon, just extending things a little bit further to just encompass sort of the art of creating jokes, I think sort of also worth a part of this conversation is the documentary The Aristocrats.
Oh, of course, yes.
Which is, I mean, it's about a stand-up comedy bit, but
Yeah.
it's maybe not about stand-up comedy per se. If you haven't seen The Aristocrats, oh my God, what are you doing with your life? If people don't know it, The Aristocrats is a fairly tame joke that can be told, Okay, but All the Aristocrats really is kind of the beginning of a joke, which is about a family of performers that come into. It doesn't even have to be a family, but usually it's a family. A family of performers that come into a manager's office, and he's like, "Oh, what is your act?" And they perform the act for him. And then the punchline is, and what do you call it? We call it the Aristocrats.
And it's how you fill it in.
Between the beginning of the joke and the end of the joke is where the funny actually really exists, and allows the comedians to imbue the joke with like their own very specific style of humor. So a lot of the comedians doing it will do the dirtiest possible version of it.
Bob Saget in that.
It doesn't get dirtier than Bob Saget.
Bob Saget, the late great Bob Saget, just goes off a cliff in that.
Yeah.
In that.
And so the documentary is about this single joke and the way that it's sort of been interpreted and reinterpreted over the years. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was a show made for Showtime in the US. It's not available really anywhere except for some uploads on YouTube these days. It's called The Green Room with Paul Provenza. Paul Provenza is a stand-up comedian.
You mentioned him a couple of times. Yeah, you're a big Provenza fan, aren't you?
Yeah. From like a broad cultural standpoint, he's best known as the guy that came in for the final season of Northern Exposure as the new Doctor when Rob Morrow was sort of exiting the program. So he's probably best known for that, but he was a stand-up comedian. He's very much interested in the art of stand-up. He was one of the co-producers of The Aristocrats. It was him and Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. So they're the ones responsible for that doco. But he does this TV show called The Green Room, and it's basically every episode of it, and there's maybe like 20 episodes thereabouts. He gets 4 or 5 comedians to all just sort of sit in a circle with a audience behind. So it's sort of, theatre and around sort of, and it's just comedians talking about the art of comedy. But there are some amazing names that he has through the 2 seasons of the show that he did. It's really incredible. I think people should, very
Check
much
it out
on YouTube.
I would also ask that
Very
people.
drunk and very sweaty also, which is
I would
great.
also. I know how that can be. I would also ask that people check out a documentary called The Last Laugh, which is a whole lot of Jewish comedians try to figure out if there's a funny way to tell a joke about the Holocaust, and they work in.
I'm laughing already.
Oh, the end of this, what's her name? Sarah Silverman, and I'm not going to tell it because I don't know if I could pull it off without getting us into trouble, but she tells a joke that was told to her by Walter Matthau, and it is one of the funniest jokes entirely to do with the Holocaust and Auschwitz, and the way she tells it, it just had me on this, and I tried to retell it to my wife, and I couldn't get it out because I was laughing so hard. So if you can see a documentary called The Last Laugh, it's all about the construction of the joke. It came up in the wake of 9/11, and when was it okay to start sort of discussing that tragedy through the prism of telling jokes and stand up and exploring it that way, and it goes back to the Holocaust. And so yeah, it's a terrific doco.
I feel that telling that joke probably lands differently if you are named Silverman or Matthau
Yes, I think so.
than Simon Foster. Just putting that out there maybe is an idea.
I think that's probably exactly right. Yes.
But anyway, Simon, is this thing on? Let's watch a clip.
Another one?
Yeah, why not?
All right, Alex Novak, downstairs in 2 minutes.
That's me.
Well, you better head down there then.
Where?
Just straight behind you, down the stairs.
Hey, what up, man? How you doing? You see the light? Just get off, right?
Straight women's experiences.
There you go.
Like,
Just talk to him. Have fun.
Is this thing on? Is another Bradley Cooper directed film which looks at a damaged artist, someone who uses their art and craft. In this case, it's a stand-up comedy act in what was the Bernstein doco? Was it called Bernstein? Or Bernstein film that he starred in? It was about these troubled souls that use their talent to try to deal with changes in their life and try to deal with...
Maestro.
The Maestro, thank you. It was called Maestro. You're absolutely right. In this one, we meet Alex Novak, who's played by a wonderful Will Arnett. He's a freshly separated father and husband, just moved out of the family home. He's shuffling towards middle-age irrelevance. He saves $10 on a bar surcharge by signing up for an open mic stand-up spot, having never done stand-up before. But getting up there, just talking honestly to this crowd that seems to be okay with that. I don't know if Aussie crowds would take to it the way this underground New York nightclub crowd takes to it. it sort of brings his life as a flawed everyman, and also the troubled husband of Tess, played by Laura Dern, and how much she means to him, into a real focus. And there's a lot of strength in how this film uses stand-up and the art and craft of stand-up and crafting jokes and being honest with the way you are on stage, to find this man's sort of purpose, a new purpose, an older purpose for him. I think director Bradley Cooper, who's got sort of a comic relief part as Alex's sort of shallow actor wannabe best friend, he does really good work here as a director. There's a real, in much the same way that Marty Supreme has this very dark shot on film sort of look to it. It harkens back to some of the late night New York films of the 70s and early 80s. He captures a real ground level naturalism and authenticity in his characters and the setting. That I don't think it says anything too profound, this movie, but it does create a handful of really winning characters that you like hanging out with, like spending time with. I should say, after all our discussion about stand-up at the top of the episode, two things rarely come across convincingly in movies: stand-up comedy and soccer. Is this thing on mostly gets that stage experience right for both the performer, and Arnett's done a lot of stand-up work and he's great in those scenes, and also for the audience. There is still those moments where he says something on stage, the audience laughs, and you kind of wonder, what are they laughing at? They're just laughing because it's a movie. That's not a funny gag. That wouldn't get a laugh at a stand-up gig. But it's kind of like those moments where people dance in movies and you know it's not the same song playing. They're just told to move, and it has that sort of uncanny valley feel to it. But overall, I quite liked Is This Thing On?
So I saw this movie with you, and
Yes, you did.
I wanted to like this movie so much more than the actual experience of watching it. And
I've heard that from a few people, yes.
the further I've gotten away from this, the more I actually really dislike this movie. So you mentioned that it feels very naturalistic, and it does, and that is absolutely the strongest point of this. I think that the cinematography of this is really, really nice. I think that the performances are also equally as naturalistic. I think that all works out very nicely and gives a overall tone where I was so won over by that. That is kind of where my I wish this was better sort of factors in. But where it falls apart is the stand-up comedy aspect of it. So the premise of this one, and I don't think you mentioned the name in there. My mind was wandering just to, other endeavors just a moment ago. So I don't know if you mentioned him or not, but the story is based on a real-life comedian named John Bishop. He's a guy from the UK. I think he's Irish. Just as a fun bit of trivia, he was actually a panelist on the Irish version of The Panel for about a year or two.
Nice. I've seen him a couple of times on Would I Lie to You, and I think he did like 8 out of 10s does Countdown. He does the panel show circuit over there like most of the comedians do.
Yeah, but his story was he was a guy who was getting separated from his wife, ends up just, does exactly what we see in the movie, pops his name down because he doesn't want to pay a cover charge, and goes up on stage and performs at an open mic night and sort of works through a bit of his stuff. And he actually builds a career as a comedian and develops some material. Yeah. What we don't really see in this is two things. One, the John Bishop story actually makes sense because one, it actually happened. But two, he wasn't doing it at like just, maybe the premier comedy club in America, which is the Comedy Cellar, which is just happens to be where Will Arnett sort of barrels in. Instead, he was just doing it like a local pub somewhere. Yeah. Okay, and the sort of audience you'd get that's forgiving for what is just lousy, non-existent material for just some drunk guy getting up on stage, okay, is very different to somebody getting up on stage at somewhere like the Comedy Cellar.
Exactly my point. Yeah, that's the point I made, that American audiences must be so much more forgiving to let a guy rant like this.
It's not just like American audience. I'm just talking about like specifically at the Comedy Cellar. You were getting people who are coming to the Comedy Cellar to see some of the best stand-ups, or at least trying to see people that are aspiring to be amongst the best. You're not going to be happy sitting in that crowd seeing someone who's just stumbling up who doesn't have any material at all.
Work through his problems. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen. And so that's a huge frustration with this. If they had played it where it was a much smaller just venue somewhere, okay, like that authenticity that works for the rest of the movie wouldn't be lost entirely in just an instant by what they do here. Like, I've been to the Comedy Cellar, I've been to the Comedy Cellar. I've been in that room that they're filming it in, as well as a couple of other rooms in there.
Yeah.
And like the audience is there because you're expecting it to be like, you know, some names that you've heard of or people who are really aspiring to be amongst the best. And
Even on an open mic night, there must be open micers who turn up there that
there
are
are
just
open
stumbling
mic things.
through.
So one of the things that's actually kind of very interesting moments in it is that you see them backstage and they see like the video of the 6 rooms that exist in the Comedy Cellar now.
Yeah.
I don't think there were 6 rooms when I was there. I think they've put in a couple of those rooms since. But certainly they do open mic nights. Okay.
Did you get up? Did you do a bit? Did you do your Auschwitz joke?
Yeah, I'm going to be doing no, Simon. Sorry, I was about to say something and then I realised, no, this is being recorded. But look, you're expecting to see sort of the best of the best or the aspiring to be the best. And certainly what he does there would not have passed muster with anyone in that room.
Yeah, that's what I as well. And that's my point that
But then, it's not only that...
You very rarely see convincing stand-up in movies, just like soccer. They can't shoot soccer and soccer never looks real on screen. And
Yeah,
I've always found the same with stand-up.
Yeah, it's not even like just that first thing, but he keeps on going back up with like very little material.
Yeah.
And
It's just
not
his
only is the
attitude.
audience accepting, but also all the other comedians who actually are working on an act, like they all seem okay with him being there without material. Like it's just
And
very
you make a good
frustrating.
point because the film didn't need to drop him in the middle of the Comedy Cellar. The point that it's a cathartic experience for him, he could have just been at some pub in Boston, or he could have just turned up at any sort of corner stage and done a quick gig at the local tavern, because his success, or his booming sort of success at it didn't have to be, that wasn't central to his becoming better as a man. I don't disagree with you on any of that.
Yeah. Anyway, so like that just kind of, it corrupts what was otherwise kind of an interesting like idea and structure. And I kind of like that as the film goes on, it stops being so much about him necessarily doing stand-up comedy, but also you find out that his like ex-wife-ish, they're not quite divorced entirely, played by Laura Dern, like she had her own like ambitions as a young person that was lost, like
A volleyball player.
Yeah, volleyball. I was trying to remember exactly what it was that she was doing. And like that kind of plays a little bit interesting, but by the time they really start leaning into that, like it just kind of feels a bit inconsequential to what we've seen so far. Like it just kind of feels like the film's just too far along to get away with that.
The mere presence of Laura Dern does a lot of the heavy lifting in this film. She's so good on screen, both with Arnett and just in bringing audience focus to her scene, that I think it skims over some of the shortcomings in the script. I think I know this movie bumped around the release schedule quite a bit. I know the distributor was waiting to see if it played at all with the award season crowd, which it ended up not doing. So it's slotted into this first week in February graveyard, and I mean it's a quality film. So I don't think it's a bad film at all. I just think
it's not bad. It's just disappointing.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Also, just as a bit of a side thing, there is a role in it for Will Arnett's podcast co-host Sean Hayes, who performs in this with his real life husband. They're just kind of like in the background. They're never actually given a justification to exist as characters in this movie.
They all felt like
it's really frustrating.
They all felt like improv scenes, those ones, which is probably to their credit. They probably seem very real and to the point. But yeah, you're right. It's strange seeing him out of focus in the background a lot when he's such a compelling on-screen person. Amy Sedaris too. Amy Sedaris is a name player who's in this, and she barely gets a Guernsey.
Well, like there are, like within the world of the Comedy Cellar, a whole bunch of up-and-coming comics that are given roles in this, as well as quite a number of established people. Like if you have a movie set at the Comedy Cellar and Dave Attell isn't on screen for a few minutes, like you're doing it wrong. And thankfully this film does have Dave Attell in it doing like 3.5 seconds of a bit somewhere.
Is this thing on? Is in quite a few cinemas this week. It's the major release across the major chains here in Australia, and is still sort of finding audiences around the world. So do check it out. What have you been watching? Oh, we're not up to there yet, but I'm damn keen to hear what you want to talk about.
The Muppets, Simon.
The Muppets. Play the clip.
Simon, okay, probably the question that we need to ask right at the beginning here is, the Muppets 2026, what's it about? It's about 30 minutes. Ho, ho, ho. Play the clip.
We're doing the show again, Frog.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my God, it's you.
You're my idol.
You're sweet. Go on.
I grew up watching you. My parents grew up watching you. Their parents grew up watching you.
We are so excited to be back where it all started and then ended
and then is maybe starting again depending on how tonight goes.
I've been burned before.
It's the Muppet Show, and it starts right now. Okay, maybe we're a little rusty.
Simon Foster, back in, I don't know, the early days of the internet, like the absolute earliest days, there was this website you might have heard of before called The Onion. Now,
Oh, absolutely. Funny.
very funny. It's still around these days. Maybe not as funny as some of the spin-offs.
Yeah.
Okay, but, you know.
I used to go to it religiously, but no, I haven't looked at it for many a moon.
Yeah. The problem with The Onion is that the funniest thing is the headline.
Yes.
And it just doesn't really translate in like a modern internet context where once the headline's given away, like there's no value to the rest of the article. But that's a side thing. One of the things that just always amused me were two bits of merchandise that The Onion used to sell. One was a fake newspaper headline for Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. And the headline is something along the effect of, "Holy shit, we walked on the moon." And I just think that's a very, very funny thing. And I've always meant to buy it and I just never have. So if you see that behind me in a couple of weeks' time, it means I've finally pulled the trigger. If they still sell it, I don't know. And the other thing was a t-shirt they sold that just had a bit of text on the front that said, "I appreciate the Muppets on a deeper level than you." Now, it struck me as very, very funny, but also I think it was just one of these things that caught me at the exact right time. And I feel that I have built a large part of my identity around this line from the t-shirt. Okay, and so as, like, I discovered this, like, you know, we'll say it was maybe like circa 2000, 2001. It was pretty early days for me being online, maybe even slightly earlier. Since then, we've seen like a number of incarnations of the Muppets come along, and certainly within the cultural sphere of the early 2000s, A Muppet's Christmas Carol was still part of like the sort of cultural discussion.
Of course, yeah, it still is in many respects.
But I would look at the modern Muppet stuff and I would always turn my nose up it. And you know why? It's because I appreciate the Muppets on a deeper level than you. And
We have discussed on this podcast just what a mess Disney made of the Muppets for a number of years. Successfully relaunched as the Jason Segel movie, but other than that,
I wasn't happy with that. I thought that was kind of terrible.
Yeah, no, I thought they kind of got it as
But you know
good
why-
as they'd done it in the last 2 decades.
But you know why you liked it and I was completely against it?
Why, Dan?
It's because I appreciate the Muppets on a deeper level.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I should point out that my entire house, especially from my sister's perspective, she adored everything about the Muppets. So I was stepping over Muppets memorabilia for most of my teenage years. It was such a prevalent feature in my home, and yeah, we love the Muppets. So I'm all there for the Muppets. In fact, I'd also go as far as to say I appreciate the Muppets more than you do.
I don't even understand what I'm hearing right now. But look, so the Muppets have been through another number of incarnations. The last good one, I would contend, is Muppets Tonight, which was an effort from the late 90s to do effectively the old school Muppets TV program, but as a late night television show. So kind of in the spirit... Oh, do you not know this, Simon?
I do not recall that at all.
Do you know why?
Oh, yes, I do, because you appreciate the Muppets more than
Exactly.
I do.
No, so Muppets Tonight lasted, I think, about 2 seasons. It introduced a TV show host as like your main Muppet. Because what I like about the Muppets is that every movie that comes along, every TV show, always has like a new Muppet that ends up joining the tribe.
The roster.
Effectively. Yeah. So anyway, this begins, it's got like a late night talk show host, and so it's structured around the fact, because this is the 90s, so it's coming off the peak of Letterman and Leno and all this sort of, the Chevy Chase show, the Magic Hour with Magic Johnson. Like there were just so many late night chat shows.
The Martin Short show, I used to watch that.
But that was a daytime show.
That was
That's
a daytime
different.
one, yeah.
Similar structure. But anyway, so it was kind of one of those programs, but had sketches and everything else. So it was a way of making the Muppets contemporary to the 90s. Anyway, that was actually quite good. Like there was some good sketches in there, and I think it's fondly remembered by a lot of Muppets fans. But there's been efforts since then. There was the effort to do a show called The Muppets, which was them doing kind of like The Office, but behind the scenes of producing a Muppets TV program. And it stank. It was just really, really bad. During COVID, there was an effort to do some like short form Muppet stuff, but it didn't really quite play. So I was really interested, and it's past tense because I've seen it now, but I was really interested by this idea that they are producing a new Muppets TV program for 2026. Now, they are not making a series. They've made one single episode, a bit of a test balloon, and I can't think of any other times they do this. It kind of frustrates me that they haven't just pulled the pin and said, let's go and do like a full season. Okay, but Seth Rogen is producing this new Muppets special. It goes for 30 minutes of length, so it's slightly longer than an episode of The Muppet Show back in the day, okay, but made for streaming, so like 30 minutes is fine. And it flies by, so like that's good. Like you don't feel like you're wasting time with this 30 minutes. But they've made just this 1.5 hour special with the idea that maybe if there's an audience for it on Disney Plus, they'll be able to make some more. And here's the thing, the reviews have all been really good. It's only, as we record this, been streaming now for 4 hours. So there's no word as we speak as to how successful this is. But I will say, I got some proper laughs out of this.
Yes.
I watched this, and this feels like the old school Muppet TV show, as though they'd never stopped production at all and just kept on barreling through, and this is just the current version of it.
I am surprised at how much I warmed to this almost instantly.
You have watched it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Not like literally an hour ago I put it on. when we agreed to what time we were recording this podcast, I thought, oh, that gives me time to watch The Muppet Show, which I haven't said in a long time. So I think they nail it with Sabrina Carpenter as the guest. She is totally in on all the on the vibe of the show, on what they're trying to achieve. I think they get the comedy bits. The comedy bits have barely changed in the 40 years since the original show came out.
I'd say they haven't changed.
But they were still very, very funny. The Gonzo on skates going around calling out supporting actress Oscar winners. He's got, at the end when he skates past and goes, Diane Wiest. I broke up laughing. It's got some very, very funny stuff in it. The Waldorf and Statler stuff is really good. The Miss Piggy, who has quite a big sort of part in the show and sort of has a face-off with Sabrina Carpenter, I thought was a hoot. So, yeah, I think this one is a real winner.
What's great with the Sabrina Carpenter Miss Piggy team-up is that Sabrina Carpenter, and look, I don't know a lot about Sabrina Carpenter. Okay, I'm certainly not in like the, in the desired audience for it. But from what I've sort of seen of her, like she seems like she's a pretty savvy, pretty funny person. And she's perfectly cast in this. I think she's, of anyone you're going to get to be the guest star for a Muppet show, like she's like who you want to pick. But like she pairs with Miss Piggy so well because Sabrina Carpenter looks presentationally like Miss Piggy. Like she's who Miss Piggy aspires to be.
Yeah.
Okay,
which
but
is
it's kind
completely
of
reversed, which is reversed in their banter on the show.
Yeah, but they play this with this idea of Sabrina Carpenter being completely reverential to Miss Piggy and, her sense of fashion and her cultural identity. Like, there's this great moment where she's like, I grew up and I've been obsessed with you since I was a little girl. My parents were obsessed with you. My grandparents were obsessed with you.
All right, that's enough.
Very, very funny stuff. But, like, they get so many things right. So the staging of this looks and feels like the old Muppet Show. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a bigger set by any means. Like, it still feels like an old rinky-dink, like, theatre. So the setting feels right. The incorporation of the various guest stars, being Sabrina Carpenter, being Seth Rogen, being Maya Rudolph, that feels
like the
right.
Maya Rudolph
It's got the
bits?
requisite number of chickens in the background. Like, it just ticks all the boxes along the way. I'll be bereft if they don't move ahead and do more of this show.
Yeah, look, until you mentioned it just then, I didn't know this was a one and done sort of thing. I would have thought they had stars lined up down the line. So what's the strategy with that? Why would they just drop a half-hour thing and hope that it connects? That seems like
I think broadly there's some concern and nervousness at Disney that people don't care about the Muppets anymore.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I think that's probably perfectly fair as a concern.
Yep.
That said, I don't think the Muppets have been handled particularly well for 25 plus years. Yeah, here's the thing. You talked about it being hilarious. I think that as a special, this is fine. As an ongoing concern, I would be a bit worried that they're not necessarily delivering. I think some of the jokes are a bit clunky. So there's suddenly there were sketches which were fine, like sort of, fine to very good. I think that the Miss Piggy doing Bridgerton, I thought was very, very funny.
Very funny.
Like, that worked for me perfectly.
The islands in the stream when she fell off the tyre was very funny.
Islands in a Stream was pretty funny. And just think about Bridgerton for a moment, though. There was a review for this in the New York Times with Jamie Poniwozik, I think was the person doing the review. And he said something about how the Muppets are timeless. The Muppets actually aren't timeless, and this is, I think, the mistake that people make with the Muppets. The Muppets are actually, like, subtly very much rooted in the time that they produce it. So if you think about the original Muppet Show, you think about, like, those sort of iconic things like Minot Minot. Minot Minot comes from a Swedish porn movie that was playing in theaters that the writers of the show were obsessed with. I mean, I know that you know, but you know, I'm just saying. But, like, you have to sort of think that the time that it was made, it was... but, like, it was this countercultural thing that was taking place within, like, the US at the time.
Yeah.
So they thought it'd be very funny to incorporate this into a puppet show. But, like, it was culturally relevant of the moment.
And very much of Jim Henson's creative mindset. It was very much one, maybe two men's vision. And they're counting on, you know, Seth Rogen and his team of writers to so perfectly mimic that, to get that right this time around for a generation of people who are now streaming, who, you know, 40 years, 50 years after it came out. So
yeah. So, like, Bridgerton was no perfect in terms of something that they're going to do a parody of.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's also, they do a parody, but it's not really a strict parody. It's just basically a sketch that kind of owes itself to Bridgerton a little bit. It's not like it's actually a, you know, specific sort of homage-y sort of riff on Bridgerton.
All right.
Like,
So we're on board. That's
I thought that was very clever, but again, I just think some of the jokes weren't great. Statler and Waldorf, like, they repeat the classic Statler and Waldorf joke, which was, oh, it's not half good. Like, you know, it's kind of, you know. I just think it should have been a little bit sharper than it was at times, but for the most part, they nail it completely. And again, I'll be very upset if they don't move ahead with more, because this has so much promise. And there is nothing that excites me more than on Saturday morning, sitting down with my daughter, and I won't force it upon her, but I'm just going to start playing the Muppets, and she will come over and sit on the couch, and she will watch that for half an hour. She will laugh, because I know her sense of humor. It's pretty much mine. She will laugh and have a great time with it, as long as I don't sort of force it on her.
Yeah.
And then straight afterwards, she will go to my study where I'm right now. She's going to pull this down, and she's going to force me to play with this puppet for like 2 to 3 hours afterwards, which is going to be very annoying. But at the same time, it's going to come from such a position of love, because she appreciates the Muppets more than you, Simon Foster. Simon Foster, what else have you been watching?
Dan Puppet, thank you for asking. I went to the movies very early this morning and I saw the new Jason Statham film Shelter. Just me and maybe 3 or 4 other
thoughts and prayers.
Me and 3 other men of a similar vintage were there, reliving the early great days of our Jason Statham completist mentality. This is the story of an ex, and I want to get this right because it's a great B movie.
Because it's important.
B movie 101 plot. As his new... Oh, no, that's the... Is this thing on? I've already done that. He's not in that movie. Forced out of a decade of off-the-grid living, an ex-Black Op agent, that's the Jason Statham, finds himself the guardian of a teenager, the absolutely terrific Bodhi Ray Breathnach, with her own damaged psyche, and an unforgiving ex-boss, Bill Nye, completely chewing the scenery as only Bill Nye does, wanting him dead. So that's your basic action movie opus. It's, like I say, it's B-movie 101, but there is... And I was quite taken and quite surprised by this. There's a bit of a heartbeat at the middle of this movie, and it's the bond between this young teenage girl played by Bodhi Ray Breathnach. It's very hard to say. It's a real star-making turn for her. And an aging Statham. This was the first time that I've noticed sort of the twisted scar tissue and the deep craters on his forehead and the really sort of cavernous worry lines, that it really makes him seem about as human as he's ever been on screen, and that's quite the achievement because he's kind of been playing the same character for the last 30 odd years now. There's also this very stark, very bleak sort of Scottish coastline where a lot of the action takes place. There's a real authenticity. It feels like a very sturdy sort of film, this one, and if it doesn't sort of aim too high, which is not something you can really accuse many Statham films of doing, it achieves its own sense of integrity and its own, and certainly some terrific action scenes. It's directed by a guy called Rick Roman Waugh, who did the 2 Greenland films, the first one of which was terrific. The second one, I haven't watched it yet, so we'll have to check that out. But yeah, look, Shelters was a surprise. I was kind of won over by it at the end. Not going to feature too heavily come the next award season, but achieves what it sets out to do.
Indeed. I mean, if you think about it, like Dr. Teeth and Electric Mayhem, like they're a parody of the Velvet Underground. I mean, it's all from the 70s. No, let's move on. What else have you been watching, Simon?
All right, very quickly, you and I have been very vocal in our dislike of the true crime miniseries of one Ryan Murphy. We despise these shows, the Ed Gein thing, the Dharma thing. They're icky. Which is why it's taken me a few months to come around and watch Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Sort of the granddaddy, the worst of all the serial killers, 30 deaths, young men killed in horrific ways. In this series, the very first, which I think has been available on Foxtel here in Australia and Peacock in the US since about October, maybe early November, in the very first episode, Gacy's caught. He makes a few mistakes. The police that are watching him are able to move very swiftly, and he's arrested. What happens over the next series of episodes is that we start to meet the people and the lives that are impacted by his crimes as he starts to reveal the grave sites where he's buried or disposed of the bodies. So this film, this miniseries, really takes as its focus the tragedy of the victims and the tentacles of despair and the tentacles of sadness that go out from this one act or these series of acts that Gacy undertakes, and how far that sadness and horrific sort of impact on the community and families and friends really stretches. Having said that, it is also a beautiful looking miniseries. If you want to see something that immediately reminds you of Fincher's Zodiac, this is the one to watch. None of the cast jumped out as names I knew except Michael Angarano, who we've seen in a few things now, and you'll certainly recognise him when you see him, and the great James Badge Dale as the investigating police officer who's put in charge of, who's only been in the gig in this suburb for 3 months when this all sort of falls in his lap. The guy playing Gacy, Michael Chernus, I hadn't heard of, but he is just electric and compelling and completely makes you understand how people who lead safe, happy, healthy lives could be caught up in his spell and become part of his world and ultimately, suffer terribly at his hands. It is a really, really great miniseries, and I thoroughly recommend it. If you've had your fill of those icky, tawdry, exploitative Ryan Murphy ones, this is the inverse of that.
Okay, so people I'd like to see on upcoming episodes of The Muppet Show.
Right.
Matt Damon.
Yes.
Sam Richardson.
Sam Richardson. Who's that?
He's that really funny guy. He's like from Detroiters. He's in all the... Yeah.
Yes, I know Sam Richardson.
He's in Veep.
Of course.
Yeah. Tina Fey.
Tina Fey. I was literally about to say Tina Fey would be great. That would be
anyway.
Good. We're showing our age a little bit. What about the kids? What would we get? Would we get The Weekend on there? Is he still a thing?
Not The Weekend, Simon, please. Look, I mean, what was the thing with the original Muppet Show, though, Simon, was that the celebrities, it's like Peter Ustinov. Like, it's not like the kids were clamoring,
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, it's all ages across the board, for sure. Let's get Mel Gibson on there. He'd be funny.
How about we don't?
What else have you been watching, Dan?
What else have I been watching? Look, during the week, I just wanted a crowd pleaser to throw onto the TV.
Yes.
So I've been watching like the X-Files a whole bunch, and I just needed a break this week. Sure. So I watched myself a little movie, something which I've been planning to watch for a while, just because I'd heard it was kind of a bit fun, and just sort of ticked a few boxes for me. I wanted to check out Bank of Dave. I don't know if you've watched this, Simon, but it was...
I have not. Who's the lead actor in it?
So this is Rory Kinnear. I love Rory Kinnear. He's great.
Yeah, I've only ever seen him do darker stuff. He did that film with Jesse Buckley called Men? And he was so mean and so creepy in that. It's hard for me to see him any other way, but I've heard good things about Bank of Dave. I didn't know it was a franchise.
The best thing that Rory Kinnear did was he's in the very first episode of Black Mirror as the UK Prime Minister, a role that he has played in many, many productions at this point. He's been a UK Prime Minister in so many shows. Most recently, The Diplomat, but certainly, it's part of the oeuvre. So Rory Kinnear plays the UK Prime Minister, and there's I think somebody's been taken hostage, and it's been quite a few years. I'm trying to remember exactly.
Oh, this is
how
the Black
works.
Mirror. Sorry, this isn't
Black Mirror episode.
Yes,
No, detour. So somebody's been kidnapped, and there's like a live video of them like taken hostage, and whoever's taken them is gonna kill this person unless the Prime Minister like does this one thing, and is to have sex with a pig on live television.
That's right. Yes, I recall that.
Yeah. And so it's a very sort of, black joke that you can kind of just tell in a pub somewhere and go, haha, isn't this a great idea? But as that hour of TV unravels, you start to see this guy who's being asked to do the absolute unthinkable. It's like, how do you come back from that? Like, it's, as gross and horrible as it is, it could save a life. And is that necessarily really such a, thing that's so impossible for you to do in order to save a life? But at the same time, being broadcast on TV and that he's this public figure, he becomes a joke for the rest of his life for decades beyond. And
he would have been the second British Prime Minister to have some sort of sexual encounter with a pig if rumours with regards to that other gentleman are true, but I digress.
And so he's now starring in Bank of Dave, which was a indie movie that was made. It's definitely very low budget, and the premise of this one is based on this real story. It's this guy named Dave Fishwick. He's a guy who lives in Burnley in the UK. It's a small town. It's, fallen on sort of hard times. There's a lot of financially bereft sort of people around the place. It's a town where someone like him who's made a bit of a go of his life, where he, I think he sells minibuses. He rents and sells minibuses. And so, he's made some money out of that. And, he's got a very sort of nice life, but he's also been loaning money to people over the last couple of years. And he's thinking, maybe I could launch this as an actual bank and make it as a community bank. And so the idea would be that all the profits made from the bank get pushed into other community endeavors around the place.
Nice.
And then the amount of interest that's being charged on stuff is pretty small and negligible. So it's about the idea that there'd been no new banks actually formed in the UK for 150 years, and it's this little guy who's trying to become the guy to open a new bank. And so it's a class battle because the established banking system doesn't want this sort of guy who's not of their world to be opening a bank. And it's kind of interesting. It's not really even from Dave Fishwick's perspective. It's a lawyer who's been hired to help Dave Fishwick do this, and so he finds his way into his story and falls in love in the town, and it's just kind of this nice indie. There's this really sort of forced awkwardness with the band Def Leppard, who play a role in it.
I didn't expect you to say that.
It's a thing, yeah. So you've got this film. It came out. It did perfectly okay. But my understanding, and I'm not a Bank of Dave expert by any means, but I believe that the film played in UK cinemas, performed fairly well. Netflix picked up for international distribution, and it just performed really well. So they're like, well, let's do a sequel. Sure. Hence, they looked at another thing that the titular Dave from Bank of Dave did a couple of years ago, which was that he ended up taking on the those same-day lenders.
Oh, okay, yes, so, the loan sharks sort of thing.
Yeah, the loan sharks. I think you can't necessarily call them loan sharks technically, but he certainly, that's a plot element of this.
Sure.
So you got Bank of Dave 2, which came out 2 years after the first one, which brings back most of the cast, but you don't have the original lawyer who propelled the story for the first one, or the girl that he fell in love with.
But Rory's
that's very
back.
briefly mentioned. But Rory's back, the lady that played his wife is back. Hugh Bonneville, who's the villain in the first one, comes back for a scene where he's not actually the bad guy anymore.
Nice.
The bad guy, however, is... and why is his name just falling out of my mind? Rob Delaney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The Canadian
so the villain
to the UK.
Yeah, so these same-day loan companies were based out of Jersey. So what you've got is Rob Delaney, who lives in the UK, filming his scenes as though, I'm in Jersey, but really he's just in London somewhere, filming it with the rest of them.
Nice.
So there is a sequence where they go to New York and whatnot. But then there was actually another New York transplant in it as well, which is the lady from This Is Us, and I'm trying to think of her name right now, and it's dropped out of my mind.
Cameron Manheim.
No. But she's got a very Cameron Manheim physique. Why would you say Cameron Manheim? Of all the people in the world to pull out of the old Raffidex of celebrity names.
When you say This Is Us, I think of the Paul Rudd. Oh, that's This Is 40. That was the comedy. This Is Us. Who was in This Is Us?
Was Cameron Manheim in This Is Us? Sorry, This Is 40?
We're getting very confused. You can tell how long this podcast record's gone on. We're just stumbling over the Cameron Manheim references.
Chrissy Metz.
Chrissy Metz! She's terrific in This Is 40 Us. This Is Us.
You never even know that show existed.
I did not.
But look, so she's in this as the American journalist that comes over to like provide some guidance as to same-day loans because she's been doing some research into this, and I'm sure she's like based on maybe a real character or something. And like,
okay,
it's fine, but like she's just, I don't think she's as charismatic as like the original lawyer and the girl that he fell in love with, and the love story in this one just feels a little bit forced and trying to reheat what had worked in that first film.
You know what I'm getting?
When you don't have the original two back.
I'm sensing this is kind of a Crocodile Dundee 2 scenario. All the love and passion and excitement went into the first one. Someone said, let's do a sequel. Couldn't quite recapture lightning.
Look, that's a really good analogy, I think.
Yeah. No movies.
So anyway, yeah.
We done here?
Bank of Dave 2. Worth a watch if you're after like a Sunday afternoon, just, something silly to throw onto the TV, but you're not going to change your life with it.
Okay. Screen Watching, check us out on our Facebook page at Screen Watching Podcast, on the YouTube at Screen Watching, or email us at screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com. I really should check that Gmail account. I haven't been there for a while. And you can see everything that I do when I'm not doing this over on the Substack, where my Screen Space newsletter, which went through the roof last week, thank you supporters of the Melania documentary. You came out of the woodworks to abuse me, but I don't care because it made for great traffic numbers. Yes, Screen Space newsletter on Substack.
It's great getting that traffic because they'll never come back to the page again.
I know, but you should have seen the numbers that it did. It went just based on that, and boy, I got some funny comments. A whole lot of acronyms that I had to spend most of my afternoon looking up what they stood for because I just never heard of them before. But it was a lot of fun. What do you do, Dan, when you're not doing this? You must do something.
This Is Us star Mandy Moore. She could be on the Muppets.
That would be great. I love Mandy Moore.
Yeah. Perfect. You know who else I'd like to see? Colin Hanks.
Who?
Colin Hanks.
Son of Tom. Why not Tom? Get Tom. Make it a Tom.
Not going to do the Muppet Show.
Of course he is. If they can get Peter Ustinov, they can get Tom Hanks.
Look, maybe both of them can do it.
Tom and Colin? Okay, well, you can't get Peter back. Peter's been long gone for a while now. Peter Ustinov. Yeah. That'd be good, though.
Or Peter, what's his name from Bosom Buddies?
Get Lindsay Lohan? Peter Scolari. Well, he's gone too.
Yeah, Peter Scolari.
Can't get him back.
I know, you can't do it.
Oh, that's tough.
Former Evil star Peter Scolari. Hey, folks, you can find me on the internet at Always Be Watching. It's alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter that comes out. It's got all the news and information that's important to know across all things TV and streaming and screen and just, it's all there.
Where can people see your... Where can they see your X-Files recap? Is that still a thing?
Well, look, I was doing recaps on Blue Sky, but the problem was that I just got way ahead in terms of actually watching it, and my Blue Sky updates are like about a season and a half behind where I am in real life.
You were watching episodes your Blue Sky couldn't cache.
That's exactly it.
In the words of James Tolkien from Top Gun.
Yeah. So look, I figure I'm just going to bypass that and just watch the show for pleasure.
Nice.
But I probably am going to write something on the website very shortly, which is like your guide to going back to do a rewatch and which episodes to actually watch.
Is that like a listicle? Is listicle still a thing?
Yeah, it'll be a listicle. But I'm not going to do it's like too many like blurbs or anything. It's going to be like hey, here's season 1. Like, watch these 4 episodes. They're good.
That would be good.
Look, I'm going to be pitching.
Screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com with who should be on the Muppet Show. Send us your ideas for who would be your guest for the Muppet Show.
Or if you're on Spotify, just leave a comment below.
You could do that.
Yeah. Folks, this has been Screen Watching. We'll be back next week. Less Muppet talk. Unfortunately.